All right, it's my pleasure to introduce Mary West. She's going to do the introduction for our spotlight speaker for April, Karen McNamara. So Mary West is the founder of Mary West Network. It is an amazing networking organization currently offering online and virtual weekly events. They're in the Gig Harbor area. So Mary, go ahead and introduce Karen. Thank you so much for joining us today.
All right, thank you. We are excited. Karen McNamara will be our April Spotlight speaker. Karen McNamara is a co-owner of Click Consultants, LLC, a leadership and communications consulting company. She has 27 years of leadership consulting, is an author and an expert in general communication strategies. Karen is a generalization expert, leadership and communication consultant. She helps businesses and individuals communicate and connect with different generations for success. Where there seems to be miscommunication, conflict, or a gap in connection, she helps bridge and support partnerships for new opportunities. We will be discussing the 5 different generations in today's workforce and how to target your marketing for success. In Karen's 20-minute talk, she will share how to say it, marketing different generations. Join me in welcoming Karen McNamara to share with us today as I remind her to start her timer. Karen McNamara.
Thank you so much, Cindy, for inviting me, and Mary for that wonderful introduction. I'm absolutely thrilled and excited to be here today. We are going to be talking about generations, 5 distinct generations, and focusing specifically on how we market to the different generations. And before I move on, I want to remind folks that there was a link to a handout earlier that Cindy sent out that has a note page and also a reference page. So feel free to use those or follow them or look at them afterward if that works for you as well. On the screen now, you should see 5 different generations. Is that what you're seeing? Someone nod, we are. Okay, perfect. So this is a discussion about marketing to 5 distinct generations because for the first time ever, we now have 5 distinct generations working side by side. We've had the different generations, but now they are actually in the workforce. So that is significant. This next page just shows that there's lots of different research out there, lots of conversations, lots of field study, things happening, and you also received a handout that has this information and some additional ones there too. I'm today going to focus on 3 key concepts. First, generations are shaped by key events when those people were between 8 and 18 years old. That's significant because we often think about generations being something where you create and have your own ideas based on your culture, your heritage, your background, your family, where you live, and all of that's true. But what we found in research is that those things shape our thoughts and the way we communicate and connect. But even more than that, it's about the seminal events that took place when we were between 8 and 18. So that's a key point we'll come back to. How you say or communicate your thoughts also matters. And marketing to your target generation can grow your business exponentially. So as business owners or business participants, that is an exciting concept. So today what I'm going to do is give you a little definition of the 5 distinct generations so that we're working from the same page. As I mentioned, there's a lot of research, and you'll find the dates vary a little bit when you read one to the next. So I'm going to provide you today the generations definitions based on the US Census Bureau when they come out and they refer to the different generations so that we're all working from the same page. So the first generation would be veterans, matures, World War II. Some people have referred to it as the greatest generation, and that's those that were born before 1940. Following them came the baby boomers between 1940 and 1960. And then Generation X, 1960 to 1980, followed by the generation that gets a lot of discussion these days, the Millennial or Generation Y. And then finally, Generation Z, which is the generation coming up in the workforce now, those born 2000 to the present. So that will be the working definition as we move forward. And what I'd like to do right now is get a sense for who is in the audience today. I want to know if you are a veteran generation, boomer, Xer, Gen Y, or Gen Z. So in the chat, go ahead and just indicate which one you are. Just go ahead and put that in the chat right now, and we'll see who all's here today. I see boomer. And I joined the boomers. I am a boomer, another boomer, boomer. Oh, we've got a heavy duty boomer population today. Gen X, Gen X, Gen X. So I'm seeing Generation X and baby boomer. Those are what I would expect to be the largest in the group. Any Generation Y or Z? Not today. Okay. And again, don't worry if you see, I saw one comment, someone thought they were a boomer and maybe you came out of Gen X. What happens is people, depending on which article you read, you might vary by a little bit, and that's okay. What is important is what happened between your age of 8 and 18 around you, because that's what then helps shape the way you look at the world. So let's dive into that. We have mostly, well, right now we've got boomers and Xers, which does not surprise me because we're business owners, and business owners tend to be boomers and Xers, and millennials are coming up as business owners as well. So you will see that, but we deal with all 5 generations, and that's what makes this time in the world so unique. So I'm going to break it down by generation and talk a little bit about what happened during that generation's time when they were between the ages of 8 and 18, because that's what helps us understand how to best communicate with them. So let's start with the veterans generation to get you a sense for what I'm talking about. So the veterans matures World War II generation, if you think about that generation during their time when they were between the ages of 8 and 18, some of the things that happened were Pearl Harbor. Anyone in this generation will talk about Pearl Harbor, the Korean War, the Depression, Social Security began. Military was really important in this structure. Authority was important. And there was the big flu epidemic. So when you think about this generation, and they, during the time when they were between 8 and 18, these things took place, you bet they impacted them. That was huge to them. So when you talk to someone from this generation, I know some of you have worked in healthcare and have worked with some of the elderly, and in this generation, they will speak to these things and they will remember these events. And so that's important to them. When you talk to them, they have history, they have experience, and you ask them, well, how did you get through the flu epidemic? It's like the pandemic. And they'll tell you if you listen. We heard today how important listening is. So let's talk about the boomers. We have a lot of boomers in the group. So what are the things you remember? What are some of the seminal events between your age of 8 and 18? Pop it in the chat. What are some of the things you remember? Vietnam War, protesters. What else? Kennedy assassination. Absolutely. We all remember where we were when, right? Argentina, military dictatorship, civil rights. Jimi Hendrix. Something that stands out in my mind was landing on the moon. I remember where I was when we landed on the moon. The Beatles, yes, the Beatles came into being. Absolutely. What else do you remember? The moon landing, yes. New ideas came in from India. I love it. Elvis. Yep, we have Elvis fans on this line. I know that. Mary's one. Let's see. We were also coming right out of the Depression. That was the Depression took place, and then we came in and we followed um, in kind of a period of affluence. We came out of the Depression, and I remember feeling like just so optimistic. I could do anything in the world that I wanted to do. I was going to college. I was going to have wonderful time for my kids. I was just, everything was possible because we were out of the Depression and we were past the war. So when you think about the veterans generation and the boomers, there's a slightly different focus in how they look at the world. So let's hear, we had a couple of Xers. So Generation X, write in the chat what you remember happening during your time of being 8 to 18. Generation X. Go ahead and pop that in the chat. Something began during this time. Yes, we had drugs. There was something else that came out that, there you go, Microsoft technology. That was huge. This was the first time we started to see technology really hitting the world. And now you started to have both parents going to work, and you've heard the latchkey kids. Latchkey kids became a phrase during this time. We had stock market plunges, we had layoffs, the Valdez oil spill. How many of you remember Y2K? Yeah, Y2K, both parents working. And all of a sudden, this generation started to question things and not do like the boomers, who all just worked our for a living. We worked for our organization. Work defined us. Generation X came by and said, wait a minute, I don't want to be like my parents, or I don't want to spend all my time working. I want work-life balance. And I've got technology and I can do it. So they'd go into an interview and say, I would like to work this shift, these hours. And of course, their boss was probably a boomer, and the boomer would be like, what? What are you talking about? We're the one hiring you. Ask us how you can help us, not how we can serve you. What's up with that? It was a different mindset because they said, wait a minute, why would we do this if it doesn't make sense? And the boomers didn't understand that. They thought the Xers were disrespectful. But the reality is they wanted it to make sense. They wanted to have family. They wanted to give back, and they wanted to support their community. So guess what exploded out of Generation X? Small business. Small business owners. They said, I'm going to be an entrepreneur. If you don't provide it, I will. So entrepreneurs became very big in this generation and still are today. But it was a smaller group. It wasn't the baby boomers. It wasn't coming right out of the war. There were smaller numbers. But technology was in play. So technology was a big deal too. But if you want to keep or market to Generation X, be sure you use technology and be sure you say why. Why does it matter? Okay, we don't have any millennials in the room, but some of us will have millennial kids in the room or in our lives. Tell us what happened when your kids or millennials were between 8 and 18. What things do you remember? Pop it in the chat. 9/11, you bet. How about Columbine? Shooting in schools. Became kind of a tough time for a lot of the millennials. Social media, you bet. Social media exploded, computers exploded. We never looked back. Technology became the day. Technology was the tool. You get a millennial in your office and you better have some technology there or they won't stick around because it's part of their life. It's part of what gives them the connection. Yeah, so millennials had the increase in technology, Columbine, 9/11, things were very busy. Politics was taking a center stage. And one thing I love about this generation, Generation X began it, but millennials continued it, and that was that they wanted to give back to their community. They're about causes. You see millennials today with causes. They want to support this organization, this program, this event. And if you want to connect with them, boy, talk about that organization or that potential, and you've got them. They'll stay with you. They will identify with a brand, will identify with a group. They want to give back to the community. My generation, many of our generations, the boomers gave back to the organization. But now Generation X and Generation Y or millennials want to give back to their community. How exciting is that? And we heard so much about millennials and how we can't connect. They're all self-centered and all of this. Oh, I think that's further from the truth than you, I mean, really what they want is they want to make an impact and a difference. And we need to listen to them so we know how they can do that. And if you partner them or connect them well, it's pretty darn exciting. So let's talk about the newest generation coming up, and that is Generation Z. And that is the generation that is just now entering the workforce. They're, 20, 21, 18, right around that age. And they are facing what today? They're facing a war, natural disasters, a pandemic, economic collapse, school shootings. Wow. Think about what's going on in our world right now. Does it sound like any of the other generations? In many ways, it's very similar to the veterans generation. They were flu epidemic, they were economic decline, depression, war, all of those things. But there's a huge difference between the veterans and Gen Z. What is it? Pop it in that chat. I know you know it. It's here to stay. It's technology. Technology is, they didn't have the technology in the veterans generation, but they sure have it now. And the newest generation, Generation Z, knows nothing other than technology. They don't know a world without technology. So when they face these same kinds of things as the veterans generation, they look at it differently. There's uncertainty. They're not sure what's happening tomorrow. They don't know, much like the veterans generation, but the way they handle it is technology, which is great and bad because you can hide behind technology and not connect. When you talk to a veterans generation about how they handled the flu epidemic, they say, we pulled together. We got together as a family. We wore masks and we isolated, but we got together as a family. And what does the Generation Z say? Well, we don't know how to handle it. They don't know how to connect on that except through the internet, and that's not necessarily connecting. So we have to help them. That's how we can mentor and communicate. Mentoring is a key way to communicate with both the Gen Y and the Gen Z. They've got the schooling, they've got the information, but they don't have the mentoring. And I predict that this particular generation is going to not be much like the veterans generation, where they don't go to college, instead they go to trade schools. And I think that's not all bad, because they want to put food on the table. They want to do things. They're not sure what the future brings, so they don't want to get in debt. So I think we're going to see a little shift there. So why did I talk about all of this? What does all of this mean to us as small business owners? And how does that relate to marketing? Well, I'm going to talk about one other piece in marketing, and then we're going to play a little bit. So there was a study done by the Center for Generational Kinetics in the summer of 2020. And the focus of that study was in the US, but it was about how the pandemic affected spending in the different generations. Now that's important to us as business owners. So I found it very interesting. 36% of Americans purchase groceries online for the first time. Different way of spending their money. 23% of Generation Z borrowed money from their families or friends in the past 30 days. They were feeling insecure. 36% of millennials have subscribed to new streaming entertainment service. 40% of Gen X have donated to an individual or charity to help those in need. That's exciting. 73% of Americans plan to spend their money on dining at restaurants when restrictions are lifted. And we're seeing that today. What are people doing? They're going out to eat. 57% of Americans plan to spend money on buying clothes. Have to get something for the lower half now, right? 71% of Americans agree that they will try to support local businesses more in the future. Now that's good news to us as small business owners. 68% of boomers say our country will need at least 2 years to fully recover. 28% of boomers say they will be worse off when the pandemic is over. And finally, 47% of Americans will put more emphasis on saving money after the pandemic. So when we're selling something, these are really important to keep in mind. They want to support small business. They don't want to invest a lot of money if they don't feel like they're going to get something back. That's why I think they probably won't be going on to college as much. They'll be going to trade schools. They don't want to build up a bunch of college debt because there's so much uncertainty. So as we market, we need to think about that. So let's play with it a little bit. I went to a workshop with a couple of my colleagues, Jim Connolly and Henry Klauke, and we were playing around with coming up with using a process to make a one-page notice about the world's best peanut butter and jelly sandwich. We figured, let's pick something fun, and we just worked through a process. But as we dove into it, we said, let's take it further. Let's take it and look at it from a marketing perspective related to generations. So we said, let's come up with a headliner that will target a generation, but we're selling the same thing, just to 5 distinct generations. So let's see what it looks like. Here's an example. If we were going to market to a peanut butter and jelly to the veterans generation, we might say something like, the homegrown peanut butter and jelly, how to bring your family together with a sandwich that tastes and feels like home. Was that cool? Can you see that generation saying, it's all about bringing the family together. Let's have something that tastes great together. We're marketing to where their mindset is based on what happened between them being 8 and 18. So boomers, we have a lot of boomers in the room. See if you identify with this. Remember how, after the Depression, there was a big push on let's get healthy, heart healthy, eat healthy, decrease, stop smoking, stop all the bad habits, let's get smart. So how about something like the no nonsense peanut butter and jelly guide? How to make a heart healthy, iconic sandwich that tastes just like you remember. So you see what we're doing here. We're pulling on the heart healthy, no nonsense, because we want to get out there and make it happen, but we still want to remember home. We still want to bring that home. So it's a different focus, but the same product. So how about Generation X? We have several Generation X in the group. Time saver peanut butter and jelly. How to efficiently create a tasty, fulfilling, cost-effective sandwich you can take anywhere. Can you see how that relates, or do you feel like that relates to you as a Generation X? Because now you're making it cost-effective, quick, you can take it anywhere, it's portable, because this is a go, go, go generation. They're taking care of it themselves. They want to be efficient, and they want to be able to go do what they want to do. So same thing, different focus. And how about the millennials? Now remember, Generation X started the technology. Millennials came in. Now it's the one-click peanut butter and jelly. The number one quick and easy recipe for an affordable, portable meal to satisfy your wallet, your watch, and your stomach. Can you see that linking to a millennial? My kids are both millennials, and they talk all about it's got to be affordable, it's got to be portable. I got to be able to take it with me, and I need it to satisfy me at the same time. So you're trying to tie into what's important to them. And then finally, this one's my favorite. This one we brainstormed a little bit on. And this one is Generation Z. The peanut butter and jelly goes viral. The secret to an Instagram ready sandwich worth posting that might just change the world. I love that because it highlights it going viral, which is what it's all about with this generation, being on Instagram, making it worth posting, and at the same time, changing the world, because that's what this generation is all about. So, in summary, the first step in marketing is determining who your target audience is. Next, you want to remember that each generation view is shaped by key events that took place between the ages of 8 and 18. How you say or communicate your thoughts does matter. The 2020 pandemic changed consumer practices. And when designing your marketing, keep in mind your target audience, what generation they're from, and what their preference for communication is, or you might miss a complete opportunity. And finally, have fun designing and growing your business. Thank you.
Thank you, Karen. That was great. I especially loved your PB&J headliners, as I mentioned in the chat box. I thought that was very clever because it it really illustrates what you were talking about in terms of what's important to them. That'd be fun to do with other things, right? To take that model.
Absolutely. Whatever you're marketing, if you think about your generations, try to think, how do they connect? How do they communicate? What medium do they like to use? And then when you do your marketing, target that. And you can pull in your humor too.
Yes,
That would make Katie happy.
that's right. I love it. So thank you so much, Karen. I'm going
You're
to
very welcome.
go ahead and stop the recording here.